millennials, welcome to Sunrise Extra on a Monday. Drew Carney is off today. We have a special guest with us. This is one of our Sunrise producers, Cassie Taylor, joining us in front of the camera. We've pulled her in because we are talking about all of our generations in life. Yes. And money and mortgages and hope for mortgages and buying things. Because you got, you found an interesting article today.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys just pop on Yahoo News, you know, rips off everybody's reporting, but they have an article, and the headline caught my attention. It says, millennials own nothing because the economy screwed us over for 25 years, but older generations still try and blame it on our work ethic. So this is an opinion piece, but there's also buried in that a CNBC report that does talk about millennials and wealth, or the lack thereof. And like some of the headlines, this woman who's writing this at Yahoo says, my parents don't understand why I don't own a house or a car or retirement savings account. My generation has fewer job opportunities, more student debt, and outrageous housing prices. And it's far worse for us than it was for previous generations. And I was like, well, there is some truth to that. Wait, not yet, Rod, not yet.
Assume this was published before all the jobs are out there that nobody can even fill if they're employers. Please continue.
Well, some people would say living wage jobs. It's a difference. But anyway, I just thought we should have a millennial on the panel if we're going to talk about this, right?
Advice.
Expert advice, exactly. So you said that headline at least resonated with you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same person as this person in the article. I don't own anything. Technically, the bank still owns my car. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's just.
That way. FYI.
Yeah, true. The bank owns my car too.
So yeah, no, I get a lot of the same questions from my family. It's like, why don't you have a savings? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? And it's just because you can't get ahead. Like it's very difficult, you know, versus the wages that we're getting and versus how the economy is going. It's just not ideal.
Cost of living in Portland.
Yeah, cost of living in Portland. It's different no matter where you go across the country. Like I grew up in Delaware. I went to school in West Virginia. I recently lived in Georgia for 2.5 years. And every single place that I've lived in, the cost of living has been completely different. So it's just, you never really know what you're gonna walk into when you move. And sometimes, like I had to, my job called for it. You have to move in order to get better opportunities and to make more money. So. And
this business is notorious for paying nothing.
Yeah, I mean, not nothing. I mean, it's just enough, like just enough for us to be able to survive.
Are friends that you went to college with that are, you know, not in journalism or doing something else, how were they kind of faring? Are they experiencing the same things?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on, like, there's a lot of factors at play. It just depends on, like, what industry that you are working in, how you grew up, because a lot of people, myself included, don't have that kind of nest egg that you start out with when you go off to college. There's just so many different factors at play, and not all of us can go or want to be in industries that are just big on money. We want to do things that we actually enjoy. So I think that's part of it too. We're being pulled less into those jobs that will just make us financially okay, and more into things that will also make us happy.
And I do feel like even if you don't go into college, like back in the day when I was there with a nest egg, because I didn't have one either, when you got out, the prices were more affordable. So on my, you know, what did I make? I think my very first job, I made $23,000 a year. But that was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1986, I think, 7. I could have a 2-bedroom apartment. I think there were 2 bathrooms in it. I could afford a car payment. You know what I'm saying? So it was different. You could afford way more back then. I know that you wanted to say something, Rod, off the top. What were you thinking?
I was going to say, my first job I made, it would have been 1982. Made $10,000 a year, which in 1982 was $600 a month after taxes on a monthly basis. Now even then, that wasn't enough money to live on. I actually delivered Domino's pizzas on the weekends, and I bought some, with the money I had, I bought some yard equipment, and I did yards on the weekend for people too. Then my second job, I got to what you were saying you made in Louisiana. It was my third job, and by my third job, I'm in my mid-30s now, where I thought, wow, I actually can buy an airplane ticket and plan a vacation. So that was about 10 years of working in the business before I felt like I could actually plan for a vacation.
But here's what's funny. You were saying 1986, 23,000. I made 20,000 in 2003.
I made 25,000 in 2018.
Yeah, like 20 years difference. It's the same money. And I was living in Bend, Oregon. That's a tourism, an expensive place to live. And my parents had to supplement my rent just to make it through. One of my whole checks went completely to rent. And then thank God they, helped me out to pay the rest of it. And then my second check, which was $600, was like everything else.
Yeah. I mean, that is the point. Cassie and I were talking about this before. And you can't have a span of like 30 years and not having wages keep up. That you could make something in 1986 and 2003 or even more currently that are the same, but nothing else is the same. The prices are rising. That is not sustainable.
Now we're talking about our industry in particular. I also have relatives that out of college walked into six-figure jobs, and between them and their significant other, they're making $200 grand. And I'm like, holy cow, you're in your 20s, and the two of you have $200,000. I mean, I can't even imagine having that kind of money when I was in my 20s.
What kind of attitude, do you get? You were saying like some of your family's like, why don't you have this or why don't you have this? Like, do you get so annoyed by certain articles or like stuff on social media that, it seems to always, whenever the word millennial is used, it's like always a negative, it seems like. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, and I feel like I don't even like classify myself as a millennial just because of like, that might have been like the time period that I was in, but it definitely doesn't associate me with really anything else.
Sure.
Aside from just
the word.
That word, like I don't really find a connection with that whatsoever. So, I sort through those articles and kind of look for the truths and the farces and try to understand like what other people are thinking versus what is actually happening, because I think there's a real disconnect between that too.
It feels like a horoscope almost. It's like not everyone born in August and September has the exact same personality or, whatever months. But, it's supposed to, these generalizations are supposed to fit all those people. And it doesn't, because that would piss me off.
Yeah, sometimes I like when you anytime you get clumped together in something that's like negative like that, it's like the whole lazy thing. And all of you guys know I'm not lazy.
No.
And neither are any of my coworkers that are the same age. Like we work our butts off. I just feel like at this point we're not getting rewarded as much, or we should be getting rewarded more or paid more for the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's just not equitable. Honestly, it doesn't. We're still living paycheck to paycheck, at least in my case I am.
I'm looking at Veronica Gaston here. Let me get through her comment. She says, the skyrocketing prices on everything makes it impossible for anyone to save money. $4 for a gallon of milk. Gas prices skyrocketing high. Rent prices are way too high, yet wages are not going up. Let's see.
It does seem like certainly rent and everything is going this way.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to live anywhere, within like a 20-minute commute to your workplace, it seems like, it's super expensive. On YouTube, good morning to everyone watching us on YouTube. Kim Tannehill, one of our regulars, says, this topic makes me want to jump off the I-5 bridge. No. I'll never own anything despite working to the bone constantly. Yeah, Kim, a lot of people feel that way.
Mary Thomas says, I worked 3 jobs in 1981, and the total amount was $48,000. Stanford Walker says it all goes to the CEO and CFO golden parachutes. Yeah, talking about the gap between what workers make and what the upper echelon executives make is wide.
There's also a thought that sometimes that we should be doing more, like we should be working those part-time jobs or something like that. That is just not feasible. That is not a realistic ask for people my age. And we shouldn't have to. If I go to school,
people your age used to do it. I did it when I was your age.
Well, I'm just saying, if I go to school, if I went to school, I have a bachelor's degree, master's degree. I shouldn't have to work a part-time job on the side when I am working in my career. I shouldn't have to do that to survive. That's just
with that level of education.
Yeah. With that level of education, and just the idea that the idea that if you go to college, you'll be fine. that needs to be ripped out of society too, because a lot of people
College
go to
is now like the very, you know, bottom, like you're just expected to go to college.
Yeah.
It's not a wow
That's a
thing anymore.
Really
you know?
good point.
It's like
Because
a baseline.
Our society doesn't need every single person to go to college. Right? And when I was coming up, that was a thing. That's what you aspired to. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I know that you were too in your family, right?
Yeah.
So, but it meant something different. That degree earned you a place in a certain level of profession. And now you see millennials and others graduating with a degree. Smart people, not, you know, they're baristas or they're whatever, but they're not working in their chosen field. And you're right, not everybody needs to go. Is it a trade? Is it something else? I mean, it is not worth the paper it's printed on. You know, in some cases.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask you, so do you have a college? Tell me if it's none of my business. Do you have a loan
Yes.
to pay back for college?
A lot of loans, yeah.
And what is your opinion of how expensive college has become, and the fact that I'm going to say it doesn't guarantee you a decent wage getting out of college? What's your thought on that?
I definitely think that, like many things in our society these days, it's kind of become like a money grab sort of thing. Because I can tell you, I didn't take like a full in-depth journalism class until my junior year of college, and by that time I'm already 2 years in, $60,000 in debt. So it's like, what? And that's just kind of like they spread these out, make you do these general education classes, make you have this experience, and you don't get paid. You don't get the pay that you expect when you get out of it, and it is kind of disappointing. And I think that there needs to be like a better connection between the real world, the professional world, and the college world. It can't just be all about the books. And I know in our industry it's not, because there needs to be a lot of real world experience and internship experience and stuff. But there's such a disconnect with ours somewhat, and with a lot of other industries where people just don't understand what's going to happen when they get out of college. They think that degree is a golden ticket, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, it's well said. Yeah. I mean, I've thought for a while now that we need to do a better job going back at the high school level to giving guidance for people in their careers and to understand the price of college and how long it could take you to pay that off and what certain degrees will lead to. Now, you mentioned earlier, it's not all about, you know, just finding the job that pays the most. You want to do something that you want to do, but I think a lot of people get caught off guard when they get out of college and the tremendous expense.
That's an interesting point. One of my friends had a son, older than you now, but when he was in school and applying, and I wish I could remember what it was a certain federal loan. They had to do the calculator, Rodney, about what your loan is, what it will take to pay it off, and what your chosen profession on average would earn. So the kids they at least tried to, with this one particular program, give them some indication of what they're in for.
Because I didn't have to deal with that. When I got out, my senior year at the University of Missouri in 1984, tuition hit $1,000 a semester for the very first time. That was my senior year. So it's well documented if you watch KGW TV. I worked myself through college working at McDonald's. So I didn't have any loan. So I didn't start behind the 8 ball in the same way that today's world has put you behind the 8 ball in terms of what has just exploded with the tuition cost.
And the crazy thing too is it also depends on what school you go to, because not every journalism program, not every engineering program, they're not all built the same. So you might be paying more for less at one place and getting more out of, but these kids don't even realize, like there might be a better program somewhere else that's cheaper, but they have no clue because this big shiny one is right in front of them. Like for me, for example, the University of Delaware didn't have like a great journalism program. They had a communications program. But honestly, it was better for me to go to school out of state because it was more expensive to go in state than it was for me to go to school in West Virginia.
Interesting.
Really?
Which is, there's just so many different interworkings of like the educational system now. It's like you qualify for this, but you don't qualify for this. And there's just so many barriers to entry which is a lot of times why the kids, it happened to a lot of my friends my freshman year, will just leave school because they don't feel like they can find their place, they don't feel like they're doing well enough, and then once they do drop out of school, they're made to feel like they're a failure. And that's not the case at all. It just wasn't right for you.
So think about this. I'm going to read a couple comments from the stream, but I also want to ask you, have you thought about, if you were in charge, like what could be done, like what maybe a first step or two? So let me read, and then you can kind of noodle through that. Angie Colantino says a 4-year college degree is like having a high school diploma. Single parent, 2 jobs, still paycheck to paycheck, and I'll never get out from under my loans. And I graduated high school in 1994. And then Christy Shirk says, I feel so sorry for people with kids trying to get by. I think trade schools are wonderful, which is what we talked about earlier.
Well, it was interesting, that article that this has spurred talked about, and it is just such a societal change for a lot of reasons, I think, but most of it has to do with money, is people are either not having kids or delaying. I had a kid at almost 37 years old. She was born right before I turned 37. And I put it off just because I wanted to get this career situated, and I wanted to be married and travel and do cool things before I couldn't do that, with a baby. But it's, prompting a lot of people to not have kids or to wait a long time to have kids because of money, and you want to get your career started in this business. We're in a weird business that, where you have to move around, and you've certainly moved around a lot in the last couple of years, but yeah, it just kind of delays a lot of decisions.
I couldn't even, buying a house, having a kid, I couldn't even think about it right now just because of how much we're focused on just trying to get ourselves out of the hole.
Yeah.
I said this earlier, trying to get ourselves out of the hole we dug ourselves into the early 20s. And when I say us, I'm referring to me and my boyfriend, for anyone watching. So I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah, no, it's just.
Now, when you were living in Georgia or in Delaware before, was rent a huge portion of your checks, just the same as it is in Portland, or how does kind of Portland compare?
It was honestly, it was kind of the same, because I did get a significant, I got a significant pay raise when I moved from a small market in central Georgia to Portland, Oregon. So it kind of was equal almost. So I'm still,
cost of living.
Yeah, it's
same
equal. It's still at the same level.
But at first you see the number and you're like, I remember that. And then you're like, oh, it costs more.
Yeah, I went through that too.
Costs more.
Yeah.
So it's the same amount of money.
No, same amount of money. It's still the same situation that I was in Georgia. I was still paying a whole paycheck goes to rent, and then some, and then the next paycheck 2 weeks later is whatever's left over.
Yep. So what about solutions? Do you have any? That's a big question. I don't want to just put it on you, because I'm not sure what the solution is, but where do you start?
I think that starts with honesty. I think Rod kind of hit that going all the way back to high school. You have to be honest with these kids and work with kids to figure out what it is that they really want to do, and not even what they really want to do, but what they would be good at too. And that's really hard for an 18-year-old to be able to decide. They need help. It can't just be a matter of, I want to do this. Well, there are real things that you need to think about. It's not just about the career, but it's about what comes after. And nobody thinks about that. Nobody talks about that.
The other thing, because I have a millennial and I also have a Gen Z, and it feels to me like they would say, if they're not doing a certain thing, that they're so far behind. Right? And they're only 23 or 28. And I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, you have your whole life to make different choices, and who, stays with one job. I'm a dinosaur.
You do.
Because for 32 years, but I'm like, that is not the average person. So don't compare yourself to me. But I do feel like, there are just so many things that you can do and will do, but there are some systemic things that need to change. Something has to give.
You know what is kind of cool though about now versus the thinking, you know, decades ago, was that those pressures of you better have a kid in your 20s and you better be married or you're going to be, you know, toxic weirdo
That's what a lot of my
lady.
college friends are doing
Toxic
right now.
Toxic weirdo lady who's like, what's
old
wrong with her?
maid.
She's not
That was-
married.
yeah,
or
that was
what
the
is
old
she-
No, let's go with
What's
toxic
cool is-
weirdo.
I know, it's a good- But the cool thing is, like, don't worry, you know, like, you can have, it's totally so normal and even maybe more awesome to have a kid when you're almost 40. Your back is going to hurt a little bit more and you're going to be more tired. But, like, you're so much more mature and in being able to deal with being tired and like a little child, you know, like teaching somebody something. And now it is more accepted and even kind of cheered on to switch career. Like, you could have 4 careers in your lifetime,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
Like, if you kind of were, and you know you have these core skills that you could apply, and there's a lot to learn, you know, of course, when you, but that ability, I think, and that freedom has really opened up in recent times, I think.
Yeah.
Which is you know, on the flip side is good. You may not own a house or a car, but you have these freedoms to choose different careers in life, which is neat.
We always talk about, me and Zach always talk about that, because I mean, I don't think I could survive my entire career in being a being a TV producer. Sure. I think at some point I will probably, you know, get out of the industry, and I have my master's degree, so I could teach in higher education, which I've always dreamt about doing. But we have things that we want to do, like being business owners and you know, owning a restaurant, or he works in cannabis, so maybe he wants to do a dispensary or something like that. And it's just like, we have all these ideas of things that we want to do, and it's like, oh, when are we going to start being able to actually like think about that stuff? Like, when are we going to get over the hump of like our early 20s and the credit card debt and the student loans and actually be able to like move forward? And that's kind of like the point where we're at now. It's just we feel almost stuck because the wages aren't changing, the rent isn't getting lower. It's just we're at where we're at, and we can do what we can do, pay off little things as we can, but it just seems like it's going to take so much longer for us to get to that point.
But you know what? Some of the most fun times were the times when I was the poorest. I'm serious. It is the most interesting, and you just figure it out, and you know.
Those sordid stories tomorrow on Sunrise
Don't be
Extra.
a toxic weirdo lady. We will see you tomorrow.